At 1642, a faint radar blip appeared over the restricted edge of Nevada's R4808N airspace. At first, it looked like a routine civilian mistake, but the flight path was direct, too confident for someone who didn't know where they were. Within 2 minutes, the command post at Nellis Air Force Base had confirmed the rotor signature, a Bell 407 GXP. No transponder clearance, no flight plan, no military escort, just a civilian helicopter slicing through one of the most sensitive defense corridors in the western United States. Inside the aircraft, Captain Erin Chase adjusted her heading 1 degree left to counter wind drift. Her eyes never left the altimeter. The child in the back was still breathing. Barely. Erin had no time for radio chatter, no interest in delays. The emergency room in Las Vegas was 28 minutes out by alternate route, 15 by her direct line, and 15 was the only number that mattered. A red light blinked on her console. UHF emergency frequency. Incoming call. Unidentified rotorcraft. This is Nellis Command. You are in restricted airspace. Alter course immediately. Erin thumbed her mic. Nellis. This is Sky Mercy medevac. Bell 407 GXP inbound to University Medical Center. Patient is a 7-year-old female in critical respiratory distress. I am requesting emergency corridor access. Negative. Sky Mercy. There are no exemptions for R4808N. Adjust course immediately or face intercept. The mother in the back clutched the girl closer. Erin heard the sound wet, shallow gasps. It was the kind of breathing that came before lungs failed. She tapped the GPS once, confirming trajectory. Her fingers stayed light on the cyclic. Her voice didn't change. Sky Mercy maintaining course. Patient cannot survive extended delay. I repeat, medical emergency in progress. There was no reply this time. At 1647, 2 AH-64E Apache Guardians lifted off from a forward base west of Rachel. Their orders were clear: identify and divert or disable unauthorized traffic. Their radar acquired the target within seconds. The co-pilot in the lead, Apache adjusted his helmet display, tagging the helicopter's trajectory. It wasn't evasive. It wasn't even maneuvering. Just cruising low and fast, like someone who had done this 100 times. He didn't recognize the tail number, but something else caught his attention, a flag fluttering beneath the tail boom. Civilian pilots didn't fly unit flags, not without a reason. Lieutenant Torres keyed his comms. Approaching intercept. Visual contact in 30 seconds. Locking passive target tracking. The Bell 407 GXP didn't respond to their pings. No IFF transponder. No automatic squawk code. Just that red and white blur gliding through military space as if it belonged there. The Apaches closed in. Their stubby wings bristled with Hellfires and 30mm chain guns. If this had been a threat, it would already be down. Torres watched the flight path and frowned. Whoever was flying that rotor bird knew exactly what they were doing. Flying nap of the earth, staying below radar lobe detection, but not in a hostile pattern, not weaving, not climbing, just focused, like someone on a mission. At 1653, Control issued final warning. If the aircraft did not change course in the next 30 seconds, the Apaches were authorized to begin an aggressive intercept. Not weapons hot, not yet, but enough to box her in, show presence, force compliance. Inside the Bell. Erin leaned forward, checking the little girl's pulse manually. Weak. But there. She had already cut the backup O2 valve to 100% flow. The portable monitor was flagging erratic vitals. Her fingers returned to the cyclic. The wind had shifted. From her left window, a black shadow moved into view. The Apache slid alongside like a predator, matching speed, nose gun trained ahead. Erin didn't flinch. Her eyes flicked to her left mirror. The pilot was watching her through the canopy. He expected fear. She gave him nothing. This is Apache 2 to unidentified rotorcraft. You are in violation of restricted airspace. Turn around immediately, or we will guide you down the hard way. Erin replied, flat and firm. Sky Mercy continuing medical evac. Any delay will kill my patient. I will not divert. The Apaches split formation. One moved high, the other dipped behind her tail. From their position, This wasn't defiance. It was audacity, the kind that didn't match an old Bell 407 GXP, but the pilot flew like she belonged in this space, like someone who used to own it. The next 90 seconds would determine everything. She was 23 when she first touched the stick of an A-10 Thunderbolt II. Most of the guys around her thought she'd wash out by the end of Phase 2. Erin Chase didn't flinch. She didn't talk much either. While others chased call signs and flight deck swagger, she spent nights reviewing maps, memorizing emergency procedures, drilling manual startup protocols until her hands moved before her thoughts. The instructors noticed. So did the evaluators. By the end of that first rotation, they started calling her Ghost. By 31, she was flying combat support for Falcon Guardian, a classified unit attached to rescue operations deep behind enemy lines. They didn't do public briefings. They didn't talk about kill counts. Their job was to go in when others pulled back. Erin flew low cover and precision strikes to create extraction corridors. If a pilot went down, if a team was cut off, she was often the first one in and the last one out. Her most decorated mission never appeared in public records. Firebase Echo had been under siege for 2 days, surrounded by well-armed fighters and pinned by mortar fire. A forward combat controller called in a desperate request for support. Erin was already airborne, part of a 4-ship formation doing perimeter sweeps. When the call came, she peeled off without waiting for confirmation. It was against protocol. It also saved every man on that hill. She flew 3 passes under withering ground fire, using the GAU-8A cannon to strip a path through enemy lines. Her wingman took a hit on the second run and was forced to divert. Erin stayed. Her final pass left her with 2 rounds in the magazine and fuel below minimums. She barely made it back to the forward refueling point before her engines sputtered. For that, she received the Silver Star. For that, Falcon Guardian gave her a flag. It wasn't new when they handed it to her. It had already flown over 2 other battlefields. The upper right corner was stained, a dark patch that looked like rust but wasn't. She never asked whose it was. Some things didn't need saying. She kept the flag, folded, and tucked inside her flight bag. Through every mission after that. When she retired, no press showed up, no handshake from the Secretary of the Air Force. She packed her things, signed the papers, and left the same way she entered without fanfare. What she did next surprised everyone who knew her. Erin took her savings, cashed out her remaining benefits, and bought a used Bell 407 GXP from a charter service in Montana. She named it Sky Mercy. At first, it was just her and a single stretcher kit. No PR, no website, just a private call sign, a comms radio, and a quiet network of hospitals and clinics that needed someone willing to fly into backcountry storms or isolated canyon towns where helicopters rarely dared to land. Slowly, Sky Mercy became known in EMT circles as the one you called when everything else failed. She installed a medbay kit on the rear floor, reinforced the skids, upgraded the comms, and never asked for reimbursement if families couldn't pay. When pilots asked why she flew solo, she just said it was easier to trust herself. When someone asked about the old flag stitched to her tail boom, she only said it reminded her what not to forget. Over time, the flag faded more. The corner darkened with age and sun, but it held. She never replaced it, never tried to clean it. When a veteran once asked about the mark, she said it came from a place most people didn't talk about, a place she still remembered every time she heard a rotor blade start turning in the morning. Her days followed rhythm, 0430 checklists, pre-flight by 0500 comms test at 0510. She flew low, stayed fast, and never left a patient stranded if she could help it. No medals lined her hangar walls, no flags hung overhead, only that one, stitched and weathered, fluttering gently in the wind whenever the hangar doors opened. She didn't think of herself as a hero. Heroes had speeches and uniforms. Erin had duct tape, a torque wrench, and 1,000 hours of flying alone through rain, dust, and silence But if you asked the mother of that little girl in her cabin, if you asked anyone who'd ever watched her land where no one else could, they would tell you a different story. They would say the flag still flew, and the woman behind the stick never turned away. At 1643, the Operations Center at Nellis Air Force Base flagged a potential incursion into restricted area 4808N. The signal was small but steady, moving low and fast across the southern edge of the range. On screen, the radar return suggested a light civilian rotorcraft. Not unusual in itself. What raised concern was its heading straight through one of the most sensitive zones in the western U.S. airspace grid. Senior Air Defense Controller Captain Roland McHale reviewed the sweep data twice before calling it. The aircraft showed no transponder ID, no squawk code, no flight plan on record. He leaned over to the duty tech. Tag it, track it, see if they light up any commercial registry. The tech's fingers moved across the console. After 30 seconds, he shook his head. Negative, no ADS-B, no FAA beacon. We've got nothing but raw skin. McHale keyed into the secure line. Command, this is Nellis ADC. We've got a non-squawking rotorcraft entering R4808N, speed and altitude consistent with Bell-class civilian bird. No transponder ID. No known civilian corridor clearance. Copy that. Nellis, hold posture. Try hailing on guard. Notify intercept standby. On UHF 243.0, the controller sent the standard broadcast. Unidentified rotorcraft. This is Nellis Airspace Control. You are entering restricted military zone R4808N. Alter course immediately and establish contact. No response. They repeated the call. Still nothing. At 1645, the decision was made. Scramble alert flight. Intercept protocol Delta 1. At the forward alert ramp, 2 AH-64E Apache Guardians were already fueled and armed for routine readiness drills. Once the order hit the tarmac, the pilots were in their seats within 90 seconds. The engines roared to life, their composite rotors thudding into spin. The flight led MAR, call sign Reaper 1, acknowledged dispatch and began ascent. Reaper 1 airborne. Visual acquisition in 4 mics. Tracking vector 232, speed 105 knots. Altitude estimated at 500 AGL. In the ops center, screens followed the closing vectors. The radar overlay plotted both tracks. The Bell's path remained straight, deliberate, not evasive, not erratic, just cutting across classified terrain as if no one had told them not to. The tech called out again. Still no match on registry. Visuals confirm likely Bell 407 GXP variant, civilian livery, no external armaments. The controller frowned. That's a medevac frame. Possibly, but that doesn't mean she belongs here. At 1648, the Apaches crossed into a holding box 20 kilometers from the Bell. Reaper 1 dialed down airspeed to match, adjusting formation to shadow from the rear right quarter, standard intercept pattern. He tried again on the tactical net. Unidentified rotorcraft. This is Reaper 1 with the United States Army. You are operating in a restricted area without clearance. Identify yourself and alter course immediately. We are authorized to enforce compliance. Inside the Apache, the co-pilot monitored thermal signatures, 1 engine, no weapons bay, 1 passenger heat profile in rear cabin, low activity, another adult form at the controls, still no reply. Reaper 1 repeated the transmission, still silence. The command post tightened posture. Command to Reaper 1. Begin active escort. Push to intimidate flight path reversal. Use aggressive but non-lethal posture. Reaper 1 banked slightly left, moved into side profile position, and tipped forward to cut ahead. Rotor wash pushed across the Bell's path. Still no deviation, still no broadcast. The pilot just kept flying. The Apache lead glanced at the optics readout again. His co-pilot zoomed in. She's got something hanging off the tail, some kind of flag or banner. Hold on. Back at Nellis, McHale adjusted his headset and switched to command override. Nellis control to aircraft in R4808N, now designated Sky Mercy. You are to immediately divert to heading 070. Failure to comply will result in forced escort to Tonopah test range. A new voice came over the frequency. Calm, female. This is Sky Mercy medevac. Patient on board is in critical condition. Requesting direct path to Las Vegas Medical. University Level 1 trauma. Delay not survivable. McHale stiffened. The tag confirmed what he suspected. The aircraft wasn't hostile, but the problem was now procedural. The zone was locked, and unless someone gave him override clearance, his hands were tied. Command relayed from the Regional Operations Coordinator. Negative Sky Mercy. There are no medical exemptions for this airspace. Comply immediately or risk military enforcement. There was a pause. Then the woman answered. Understood. I will continue on course. Patient's life takes priority. In the Apache cockpit, Reaper 1's pilot turned toward his co-pilot. That's not defiance. That's a decision. The controller at Nellis leaned forward again. Command, we are now in protocol deviation zone. Intercept has failed. What are your orders? The response came through seconds later. Maintain shadow formation. Do not engage. Reroute all non-essential air traffic. Track and report. The airspace cleared in 30 miles ahead. At 1651, the Bell 407 GXP continued undeterred, still below radar lobe, still cutting through layers of protected airspace like someone who knew every inch of the map. No hesitation, no acceleration, just a pilot holding a line. Protocol said she didn't belong there, but every second she stayed, something told them she did. At 1649, the twin engines of the AH-64E Apaches roared to full power. From the forward operating pad outside Tonopah, the gunships lifted into desert air within 3 minutes of the scramble order. Their mission was clear: intercept and escort a non-cooperative civilian rotorcraft that had entered restricted area 4808N and ignored multiple reroute commands. No weapons engagement, just shadow, warn, and compel compliance through presence. Reaper 1 took lead. His wingman, Lieutenant Nate Torres, slid into position off the right pylon. Call sign Reaper 2. They rose to 700 feet AGL, leveled out, and moved into intercept pattern Delta. The Bell 407 was already on visual, holding a low profile near the base of the ridge line, flying terrain, following like a bird with nowhere to land. Reaper 2 scanned the FLIR feed. Civilian frame confirmed. No apparent hardpoints, no aggressive maneuvering. But she wasn't responding. Not to warnings. Not to threats. Not even to presence. He toggled comms to internal. She's just riding this like she's got clearance from God. Reaper 1 stayed focused. Maintain intercept box. Let's push her towards 070. Shadow left. Tighten lateral separation to 30 meters. The Apaches dropped lower, forming a pincer to her flight path. Reaper 2 pulled in tight, closing to a visual range of less than 50 yards. The Bell didn't budge. No jitter, no evasive climb, just steady control. Nose pointed southeast, skimming the hills like she'd flown this route 100 times. Reaper 2 keyed his external channel. This is Apache 2 to unauthorized rotorcraft. Turn around, right now, or you're about to learn how persistent we can be. There was a pause, then a calm, clipped response. This is Sky Mercy medevac. My patient is in severe respiratory distress. Diverting will likely result in death. I am proceeding to Las Vegas Medical via most direct route. Nate scoffed. Cute excuse. You've got 10 seconds to comply, ma'am, or we start encouraging you with attitude adjustments. Inside the Bell 407, Erin adjusted collective by a hair, compensating for a headwind curl near the canyon wall. Her eyes stayed on the terrain. Her left hand hovered over the power setting, right on the cyclic, tracking micro shifts. Behind her, the monitor beeped again. Oxygen saturation had dropped. Not time for games. She keyed her mic. Apache 2, I acknowledge your directive, but I will not divert. The child on board will not survive another 15 minutes. This flight path is non-negotiable. The Apache's chin turret swung fractionally, optics tracking the Bell's path. Nate Torres leaned forward, adjusting his targeting overlay. This wasn't standard procedure anymore. He'd flown security sweeps, combat patrols, even assisted in chaos support. But this felt off. He switched channels back to command. Request permission for deterrent maneuver. Non-lethal flyover. Rattle her a little. Negative. Apache 2. Maintain formation. Hold posture. No engagement unless hostile intent is observed. Nate didn't like it. He looped behind the Bell and approached from below, dipping right, then yawing left across her tail in a wide crescent. The move was meant to intimidate, kick up rotor wash, shake her from her trajectory. It didn't work. Erin held her course, eyes steady, grip light. The Bell was slow, aging, and outmatched in every way. But it didn't drift. It didn't waver. Whoever was flying that thing had nerves like steel and hands like wire. Reaper 1 slid ahead again, flying a tight vector just above the Bell's nose, no more than 20 feet of vertical separation. His voice came back over the radio, less aggressive, more controlled. Sky Mercy. Final call. You are in breach of restricted zone protocol. You will land immediately or be escorted by force to alternate airfield. Erin answered without pause. My mission is medical. My aircraft is unarmed. I am not a threat to national security. I am trying to save a life. Reaper 1 glanced over his shoulder at his co-pilot. She's either suicidal or the calmest civilian rotor jock I've ever seen. They continued flying in locked formation, the Bell stubbornly refusing to yield, the Apaches unwilling to escalate further without cause. From their position, the desert opened up below, distant buildings creeping onto the horizon. 15 more minutes and she'd be in Las Vegas airspace. Torres looked again at the tail of her bird. There was something odd about it. A faded piece of cloth fluttering near the tail rotor, lashed just under the horizontal stabilizer. The light hit it just right. He toggled zoom on the FLIR. Wait a second. The optics enhanced the image. There, half obscured by wind fray and dirt, was a patch of color not commercial. Military. Unit insignia. Partially torn. Torn in a way he recognized from somewhere deeper than training manuals. He frowned, sat back, and didn't say a word. Not yet. Not until he was sure. At 1656 Nate Torres adjusted the FLIR magnification and brought the tail boom of the Bell 407 GXP into sharp focus. The heat signature was faint in the desert air, but the flag was clear now, fluttering just beneath the stabilizer. It was old, torn. The stitching had faded to beige, but the emblem stood out barely visible, but undeniable. The Falcon Guardian insignia. Nate leaned forward. His hand froze on the sensor toggle. That unit hadn't flown in nearly a decade. Their operations were buried in reports with too many blacked-out lines. But he knew that mark. Everyone in his family did. They had stared at it for hours during the memorial. He increased zoom another notch. There, in the upper corner of the flag, was a dark, rust-colored blotch. It looked like dried hydraulic fluid from a distance, but it wasn't. It had spread irregularly across the fabric. He had seen it before during the funeral service at Fort Benning. The flag had been laid across his brother's casket. Staff Sergeant Luis Torres, KIA during a rescue operation in 2011. But he hadn't died alone. The story, half classified and barely whispered, was that a pilot flew under mortar fire to extract the last 3 men trapped inside Firebase Echo. She had landed a gunship just long enough to pull them out, took shrapnel in the cockpit, refused to lift until everyone was secured. They'd wrapped the flag around her arm to stop the bleeding. That stain wasn't rust. It was blood. Her blood. The same cloth had been presented to the unit in a quiet ceremony afterward. Luis had kept a folded copy of the unit patch. Nate had held it in his hands every year since. Now he was staring at it on the tail of the aircraft he'd just threatened to force down. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there. His hands had started to sweat. The cyclic felt different. His voice cracked when he opened the comms. Control, abort intercept, and repeat, abort all aggressive maneuvers. That's Falcon Guardian. A silence hit the channel like someone cut power mid-transmission. Say again, Apache 2. It's her. That flag is real. That's the pilot from Echo. Reaper 1 pulled back instinctively, giving the Bell space. Torres swung wide and took position at a respectful distance off the port side. Inside the Nellis control room, the tension shifted. A controller flagged his supervisor, who flagged a major, who pulled up a file buried behind 3 levels of authorization. The mission summary read, Firebase Echo extraction, A-10 support, final pass clearance, Operator Captain Erin Chase. The name matched the registry listed for Sky Mercy. Nate's voice returned, "Lower now." "Control. I have positive visual confirmation of Falcon Guardian insignia. This rotorcraft is not hostile. Recommend immediate escort status." Mikhail keyed his override. "Sky Mercy. This is Nellis Control. You are cleared for current heading. Repeat. Cleared direct to Las Vegas Medical. Escort inbound." In the Bell's cabin, Erin kept her hands on the controls. Her eyes didn't flicker. She didn't smile. She didn't relax. Behind her, the child's breathing had stabilized slightly, but not enough. The clock kept ticking. She heard the change in tone from the Apaches. Not verbal, but mechanical. The engines no longer pulsed forward. The rotor wash stopped pressing down on her. They had moved from predators to partners. That was all she needed to know. Torres slid into loose escort position. He switched channels to private. "Sky Mercy, this is Apache 2. Go ahead, Apache 2. Ma'am, my brother was Luis Torres. He was part of that team at Echo. You flew him out." Erin paused. She remembered the mission, remembered the smoke, the chaos, the sound of rounds striking the side door. She remembered the wounded soldier who had helped lift his teammate into the aircraft, ignoring his own injury. "Your brother was a good man, Lieutenant." There was a pause. Nate's voice came back quieter. "Because of you, ma'am. Because of what you did. He lived. He came home." At 17:02, Reaper 1 contacted ATC for corridor clearance through Las Vegas. Sky Mercy was granted priority routing. No delays. No holding patterns. The path opened clean through to the trauma center helipad. The escort held position. Not standard protocol, not regulation, but some things didn't fit the handbook. Some things lived outside it, in the space between orders and legacy. Erin didn't look at them again. She didn't need to. The message had already been received. The flag had done the talking. At 17:04, the shift from intercept to escort became official. The Apaches didn't announce it. They adjusted formation, spacing out from tight combat intervals to ceremonial V-wing offset, one gunship to each side of the Bell 407 GXP. The lead Apache eased back, dropping elevation slightly to avoid turbulence on the medical chopper's rotors. The change wasn't aggressive. It was respectful. At Nellis, the command center was quiet. The duty officer had already flagged the file. Not a public one. Not something anyone in the room had read before. A clearance override was granted within 90 seconds, unlocking a folder marked Falcon Guardian, Echo Site, Extraction. The name on the first line, Captain Erin Chase. Colonel Sarah Martinez had just returned from a briefing when the flag was brought to her attention. She had served as a junior officer when Falcon Guardian was still operational. The mission at Firebase Echo had been passed around officer training circles like a myth, a pilot who went in solo under live mortar fire to pull out wounded personnel with no air support and no backup. The second she saw the name, she picked up the secure line. "Get me the Apache flight lead." The comms channel buzzed. Reaper 1 responded. "Yes, ma'am. You are escorting a legacy asset. Captain Erin Chase. Full clearance authority. Do not break formation." "Copy. Colonel. Escort confirmed." Torres stayed quiet. His Apache hovered smoothly at port offset. Every movement now felt deliberate, controlled, not for tactical advantage, but to frame the Bell's path with symmetry. His co-pilot reached up to adjust their MFD brightness. Neither spoke. Martinez keyed her mic again. "Sky Mercy. This is Colonel Sarah Martinez. You're cleared for all airspace transitions. Full authorization granted for emergency medevac corridor to Las Vegas Medical. I apologize for the earlier confusion." Erin responded, her voice even. "No apology needed. Colonel, your pilots were doing their job." Martinez nodded, though the pilot couldn't see her. "They know now, and they'll remember." At 17:07, air traffic control in Las Vegas issued expedited routing. The corridor was cleared of civilian traffic, rerouting 2 corporate jets and 1 private charter flight to create uninterrupted vertical access. For 6 minutes, the air belonged to 1 aircraft and its escort. The Bell held course at 105 knots, altitude steady just under 800 feet AGL. Erin made no attempt to change speed or acknowledge the escort again. It wasn't her style. The flag on the tail boom moved with the rotor wash, slow, calm, constant. On the ground, a young airman monitoring the secure feed stood up from his desk and crossed the room. He tapped a senior NCO on the arm, then pointed at the display. "Sir, that's the pilot from Firebase Echo, the one from the extraction." The NCO blinked, then slowly removed his cover. Across the room, 3 more personnel did the same, quietly, without orders. The radio stayed mostly silent. There was nothing left to explain. The woman flying that Bell wasn't a rogue actor or a civilian nuisance. She was a part of something older, something that ran deeper than current rotations or recent campaigns. She had worn the uniform, flown the combat grid, and walked back into civilian life without ceremony. At 1711, one of the hospital tower controllers keyed in. "Sky Mercy, you are cleared to land helipad Alpha. Trauma team standing by." "Copy that. Sky Mercy inbound?" Torres clicked on private channel. "Ma'am, if you don't mind, I'd like to stay with you to the pad." Erin's voice came back, low but direct. "Appreciated, Lieutenant." The Apaches held their protective line all the way to the city perimeter. As they descended into controlled urban airspace, ATC let them hold their spacing, something rarely done during active civilian emergency flights. No one contested it. Not that day. When the Bell touched down on the trauma pad, rotor slowing under reverse pitch, both Apaches pulled back and hovered at flank distance. Their silhouettes held for 5 seconds. Then both aircraft pivoted nose on and executed a slow banking turn, a respectful departure. Back in the control center, Martinez stood at the main console, headset hanging at her collar. She watched the flight log update with the words, "Escort complete, Sky Mercy cleared." She didn't say anything, just read the screen and nodded once. Some actions didn't require orders. Some symbols didn't need explanation. The pilots who watched that flight understood something that couldn't be briefed or trained. Legacy wasn't in the patches you wore. It was in the decisions you made when no one else could. And sometimes, in the sky, legacy flew beside you, quiet, steady, and unforgettable. The hangar sat quiet under the early morning light, its corrugated metal sides still holding the desert chill. Inside, Erin moved along the fuselage of the Bell 407 GXP with practiced rhythm. She checked the oil panel, wiped a streak of grease from the lower cowling, and made a note on her clipboard. It was 0612. The checklist had been started 30 minutes earlier. Same routine, same silence. The hangar doors were cracked open to the east. Sunlight sliced across the floor, falling just short of the flag tied beneath the tail boom. She hadn't touched it since the escort. A few more threads had loosened in the wind, but the patchwork held. The stain hadn't faded. The knock came light. A pause, then another. Not urgent. Erin didn't turn. "It's open," she said, still focused on a rivet near the fuel line. The man stepped in slowly, the creak of boots against concrete signaling caution. He stopped 10 feet away. "Ma'am, Lieutenant Nate Torres." She straightened, turned, and gave a nod. She didn't salute. It wasn't her hangar's custom. "I figured," she said, "the name rings a bell." He tried a half smile. It didn't hold. His eyes dropped to the flag, then back to her. "I came to say thank you, in person." "You already did, back in the air," Erin replied. That was enough. He stepped closer, hands behind his back, out of uniform, but still standing like he was waiting on orders. She motioned to a folding chair beside the workbench. "You don't have to stand at attention. Sit, if you want." He hesitated, then sat. Erin went back to her checklist, marking a few numbers from the hydraulic readout before speaking again. "Your brother was a good man. I didn't know his name at the time, just his voice on the comms and his will to get everyone out before himself." He nodded. "I read the mission log. What wasn't redacted, anyway. He said he never thought he'd make it out. Then he heard the A-10 come low, and he knew someone hadn't given up." Erin gave a quiet breath. That day was a mess. Smoke was thick. Bad comms. I lost my wingman to flak. I remember thinking, we might not make the strip in time. But you did. I made the pass, dropped flares, cleaned a path. The birds were already coming in. I coordinated with the 160th for the pickup. Louis said you took a hit. Minor shrapnel. We all caught something on that ridge. The thing that stuck with me was how your brother wouldn't leave the last man. I had to order the medevac to wait until he dragged the corporal aboard. That sounds like him. She set down her clipboard, folded her arms. You're a pilot now. Torres nodded. Apache flight. Out of Fort Irwin. Still learning, to be honest. Good, don't stop. He glanced at the wall, mostly bare. Just tools and a few spare parts. No medals, no plaques. He looked back at her. Why did you walk away? I didn't walk away. Erin said, I just shifted lanes. This bird serves differently, but the mission's the same. Someone needs help. You fly to them. That hasn't changed. He looked at the helicopter, the med gear strapped down, the aging nav panel. It's not much compared to what you used to fly. It's enough. It goes where I need it to. That's all that matters. He stood after a moment, looked at her with something that wasn't quite awe, but wasn't casual either. I don't think we said it right during the escort, or even now, but you changed how we think about legacy, about what service really means. Erin gave a small nod. Then keep thinking. Keep flying right. He offered a handshake. She took it, brief and firm. Tell your brother I remember him. I will. As he left, she returned to the engine panel. One last check before pre-flight. The flag behind her shifted gently in the draft. She didn't watch him go. She didn't need to. The mission, like everyone before, was already moving forward. And that was what mattered. At SO 742, the first young officer arrived, a second lieutenant from Nellis, fresh out of flight school, still wearing boots too clean for comfort. He knocked lightly, stepping into the open hangar with the caution of someone entering a place they weren't sure they belonged. Erin looked up from a tool tray, nodded once, then went back to reattaching a panel beneath the tail boom. You looking for something? The lieutenant swallowed, then cleared his throat. Ma'am, they said you might be willing to talk about threat zone routing. From the Firebase Echo playbook. Erin didn't stop working. You bring charts. Yes, ma'am. Then lay them out. Right side of the bench. That was the first one. 2 days later came a pair of National Guard warrant officers from Reno, then a reserve major from Davis-Monthan. Over the next few weeks, they kept coming. Not in crowds. Never announced. Just ones and twos. Quietly walking in with notebooks, folded maps, and the posture of people willing to listen more than they spoke. Word had spread, not officially. There were no memos, just low conversations across units, a mention in briefing rooms, a name attached to a flight corridor reroute no one could forget. Colonel Martinez called 3 weeks after the incident. We'd like you to teach. She said, part-time, just tactical decision-making. Case studies on medevac under fire. Nothing formal. Nothing you wouldn't already know in your sleep. Erin leaned against her truck outside the hangar, eyes on the sky. I'm not wearing a uniform again. Colonel, you won't have to. We just want them to hear how you think. Erin was quiet a moment. Once a month, that's my pace. That's enough. The first class was in a side room off the air wing training floor. 8 students. Martinez sat in back. Erin didn't bring slides. She brought a topo map and a red grease pencil. For 40 minutes, she walked through the decision tree of a single mission weather, terrain, payload, threat, vectors, evac, timing. Then she set the pencil down. What I did was mine. What you do is yours. Don't copy my flight path. Understand why I took it. Then build your own. No one asked for her autograph. No one posted photos. They just came back. Some brought case files. Some brought questions. Some just brought silence, needing a place where the stories were short and the lessons stayed sharp. The hangar stayed open, Not like a museum. Not like a monument. Just a working bay with a coffee pot, spare tools, and a crew schedule pinned to the wall. Erin still flew. She still answered calls. When the radio chirped, she was already in the air by the third ring. The flag on her tail never changed. Faded now, nearly translucent, but every pilot who walked through that hangar saw it. Some asked, most didn't. The ones who knew nodded. The ones who didn't eventually did. She never talked legacy, never called it mentorship. It wasn't a title. It wasn't a platform. It was just what came after the service, after the noise, after the medals went back in the drawer and the stories turned into shadows. One night, long after the last student had gone, Martinez stopped by unannounced. She found Erin sitting on the edge of the platform, boots on the skids, drinking from a chipped thermos. You know you've built something here, right? Erin didn't answer right away, just trying to keep it flying. Martinez sat beside her, arms resting on her knees. That's the thing. You are, and they see it. Erin looked out toward the ridgeline, where the air turned gold over the desert. Then let 'em fly smarter. That's all I want. And that's exactly what she gave them. Not speeches, not rank, just presence, just consistency. A place where lessons were earned, not handed down, where flying meant more than flight hours, and silence carried more weight than ceremony. The ripple never looked big from the hangar floor, but the ones who passed through carried it with them, into briefing rooms, into cockpits, into choices they'd have to make someday, when the map didn't match the terrain and the radios went dark. And when they did, they flew better, because Erin had, quietly, all along. At 0416, the call came in. Colonel Martinez's voice was calm, but clipped with urgency. A C-130 out of Travis went down near Donner Pass. 6 crew. Weather's closing. We've lost satellite tracking. Search and rescue won't reach them before nightfall. Erin didn't ask why Martinez was calling her. She just looked at the sky. The winds were already shifting east. Mountain air, high and thin. She'd flown it before. Not in this bird. But the ridges were the same. Copy. Colonel. Sky Mercy's prepping now. Launch in 20. The hangar came alive without a word. Her mechanic rolled the step card over, fueling lines already uncoiled. Erin did her checks in silence. Gloves on. Headset wired in. The Bell 407 GXP wasn't fast, but she knew how to make it count. She locked the harness across the trauma litter, double secured the med gear straps, and keyed her radio. Sky Mercy launching emergency evac, track Sierra Vector, altitude 8,000 climbing to contour. Be advised. Entry into avalanche zone by 0510. Martinez patched through again, this time from base ops. You'll have eyes, Erin. Escort units are rolling. She looked up as she cleared the apron. 2 AH-64Es were lifting just behind her call signs, Reaper 1 and Reaper 2. But they weren't alone. From Fallon came a Pavehawk pair. From Moffett, a Navy MH-60R. From Nellis, 3 Warthogs broke early pattern and banked in low. Not a scramble, not protocol. Just pilots younger, older. Some who'd sat in her hangar and learned by watching. They formed staggered intervals. No radios full of noise, just tight comms, tactical, precise. She took lead, not because of rank, because that's what they all expected. By 0452, they hit Sierra foothills. The sun hadn't cracked the ridge yet. Ground layer fog clung to the canyons like breath on glass. Erin dropped to 7,200 feet, adjusting for the air pocket drift over Donner Lake. Watch for rotors near the western ridge, she said. Wind shear's dirty on the downwind side. Copy that. Sky Mercy, came Torres's voice. Calm, measured. Visibility dropped. Rain moved sideways. They stayed close. Terrain following. Radar paint only. Erin read every echo like an old map. She dipped behind a draw near Snow Valley Peak, catching a smoother pocket. Hold line at 3 ship spacing. Drop 5 on descent vectors. No chatter unless flight critical. Her voice never rose. It didn't need to. Each aircraft shifted subtly, Smooth, choreographed. They weren't flying formation for pride. They were holding space for one reason. At 05:14, Erin's FLIR caught movement. Hotspots, 6 bodies, clustered behind wreckage scattered across a frozen slope. The C-130 had nosed into a ravine, snapped in two. Steam lifted from broken engines. One figure stood, waving something dark above his head. Target visual, no defensive presence, coordinates locked. She flared out, set the bell into hover 30 meters downslope from the crew. Wind lashed sideways. Visibility dropped to under 100 feet. Still, she dropped skids steady and low. One pavehawk flared just behind, rotors overlapping in counter-torque. Medics fast-roped, dragging 2 injured crewmen toward the bell. Erin left her seat, helped lift one inside. He was bleeding from the leg, pale and shaking. She secured the band and nodded once. Next. By 05:22, they had 4 loaded. 2 more were stable enough for pickup by the Navy Hawk. Erin throttled to vertical and cleared the ridgeline by 30 feet. The Apaches flanked again, matching altitude. Coming home, Sky Mercy. Roger, let's get them there. As they crossed back into lower altitudes, rain broke into streaks of amber. The sun had cracked the ridgeline. The escorts peeled into honor arcs, spacing wide like a tribute, not a flyby, not a show, just presence. From Fallon to Nellis, every tower relayed the same phrase. Sky Mercy, corridor clear, proceed direct, all eyes on you. She didn't respond, didn't need to. Her rotor blade kept its rhythm, the same it always had. At 06:07, she touched down at Reno Trauma Intake. Ground crews pulled the wounded with practiced hands. Erin stayed at the controls, watching until the doors closed. The final Apache hovered one last time, then turned east. Full circle doesn't look like a medal or a speech. Sometimes it looks like a line of aircraft in bad weather, flying low because one pilot knows the way, and others trust her enough to follow. By 1842, the light over the desert had softened into its final color. Erin's bell. 407 GXP moved low across the horizon, steady and silent. The skids touched down just outside her hangar. The engine spooled down with a slow whine that faded into the wind. There were no crowds waiting, no cameras, just the creak of cooling metal and the whisper of the flag tied under the tail boom. The same flag, worn thin and wind-frayed. Its upper right corner still bore the dark stain. Most people never asked. The few who did were told only that it had been with her through every mission that mattered. It wasn't just a symbol, it was memory, weight, and promise. Over time, young pilots had come to know her name not from news articles or award ceremonies, but through whispered respect. Erin Chase had shown them a different kind of service. Not loud, not adorned, but absolute. She taught by flying straight when skies turned bad and by showing up when no one else could. Her story didn't ride on headlines. It lived in quiet hangars and sharper instincts. Colonel Martinez once said Erin didn't just rescue people, she redefined what courage looked like. Not the kind that chased recognition, the kind that landed in a storm because someone needed you, even when the odds said not to go. Now, others followed her flight paths, not out of duty, but because they believed. They flew lower, slower, sharper. They read terrain differently. They paused before making the easy call. They remembered the woman who'd never raised her voice but always led. At the edge of the field, the wind shifted slightly. The flag rose, lifted once more. Its edges curled, but it held. Some colors don't need to shine to endure. Some stories don't need to shout to stay alive. Erin Chase climbed down from the cockpit, unstrapped her gloves, and walked back across the concrete alone. The hangar doors opened just enough to let her in. Then the sky behind her closed in soft and still, and the flag kept flying.